This is Walt Disney Productions Button Soup. A long time ago, a traveler named Daisy was riding the stagecoach out west. She was going to visit her Uncle Scrooge. Daisy was tired and thirsty and very hungry. She could hardly wait to reach her uncle's house. When the stagecoach pulled into town, everyone came out to see who was on it. Goofy the sheriff walked up to Daisy. "Howdy," he said. "Oh, what can I do for you?" "I'm looking for Scrooge McDuck," said Daisy. "Scrooge McDuck," cried Goofy the sheriff. "If you're as tired and hungry as you look, you should go to a hotel." Then he pointed to a little yellow house. "Old Scrooge lives there," he said, "but no one ever pays him a visit." "Ah, that is right," said Miss Clarabelle. "Old Scrooge must be the stingiest fellow in the whole West." "Yep," said Goofy, "he's the stingiest fellow in the West, all right." "I have met stingy fellows before," said Daisy. "Maybe I can teach my uncle a lesson." So Daisy went straight to the yellow house and knocked on the door. When Uncle Scrooge opened the door, Daisy threw her arms around his neck. "Surprise!" she cried. "I have come to pay you a visit, Uncle." Scrooge did not look happy to see his niece. "I did not ask you to come," he shouted. But Daisy didn't listen to him. She walked into the house. "I'm very hungry, Uncle. What do you have to eat?" "You won't find any food here," said Scrooge. He tried to hide some dirty dishes. "There's no food in the house," he cried. "Poor Uncle," said Daisy. "You must be starved." She went to the cupboard and took out a big black pot. There on the shelf was a basket of fried chicken. "Aha," she thought. "My uncle is not as poor as he pretends to be." Daisy began to fill the pot with water. Uncle Scrooge jumped up and down. "You cannot cook here," he said. "I just told you I have no food." But Daisy did not listen to him. She lit a fire under the pot. "I don't need any food," she said. Her uncle's mouth fell open. "What in the world can you cook without food?" he asked. Daisy took out an old red button. She held it under her uncle's nose and rolled it slowly between her fingers. "With this button, I can cook enough soup to fill that pot." "You can make soup with just one button?" said Scrooge. "I don't believe it." He watched Daisy drop the red button into the pot. "What do you call it?" Uncle Scrooge said. "Button soup," said Daisy. Uncle Scrooge watched Daisy snip the soup. She thought. The stingiest fellow in the West is getting curious. Now Uncle Scrooge sniffed the soup. He didn't smell anything. Daisy began to stir very quickly, and she stirred and said, "Whenever I make soup at home, we always use some salt and pepper. But since you have no food in the house, I guess you have no salt and pepper." "I don't have any food," said Scrooge, "but I always have salt and pepper for a rainy day." He lit a candle, opened up a door to the ceiling, and climbed up into the attic. The attic walls were covered with jars of spice. Scrooge held his candle up to see them better. He picked out jars of salt and pepper to add to the button soup. Daisy poured the salt and pepper into the pot. Uncle Scrooge watched. And he could hardly wait to taste the soup. Daisy began to stir again, and as she stirred, she said, "I once made this soup with an old soup bone. It was really delicious, but you have no food, so one button will have to do us." "If all you need is an old soup bone," said Scrooge, "I might be able to find one." He took the lantern, and he ran down into the cellar. Scrooge's cellar looked like a butcher's shop. He had hams and chickens and turkeys and beef. He picked out a juicy bone to add to the button soup. When Scrooge came back with the bone, Daisy dropped into the pot. The soup began to bubble and to boil. "It smells good," said Scrooge. "This soup won a blue ribbon at the state fair," said Daisy. "But that time I used potatoes and carrots." "If the blue ribbon soup had potatoes and carrots, we'll have them too," said the uncle. He ran out to the barn. Up in the hayloft, Scrooge found vegetables, potatoes, carrots, a big head of cabbage. He grabbed a pitchfork and tossed the hay. He found some potatoes and carrots to add to the button soup. By this time the soup smelled so good Uncle Scrooge was just dying to taste it. And every time Daisy named something that make the soup even better, Uncle Scrooge rushed off to find it. He ran to the woodshed for onions and celery. He milked the cows so Daisy would have some cream. He dug up his garden to get some turnips. and he carried everything to the big black pot. At last the button soup was ready to taste. "This is too much soup for me," said Daisy, "and this is too much soup for you. Let's ask someone to share it with us." "Share it?" cried Scrooge. "Let's pour it into jars and save it. Food is hard to get." "But Uncle Scrooge," said Daisy, "don't you remember? We made this soup with just one button." "That's right. So we did." So Daisy ran to everyone in town. She ran to Goofy the sheriff. She ran into the ice cream parlor for Miss Clarabelle. She ran to the general store for Mistress Minnie. She ran to the barber shop for Mickey and Cowboy Donald. And she told them all to come to Scrooge McDuck's house. And when they came in, Scrooge gave them each a bowl. "You, sir, are very clever," said Miss Clarabelle. "Scrooge is not the stingiest fellow any more." Daisy only winked her eye. Soon they all sat down to a button soup fest, and it was really delicious. "What a clever niece I have," said Scrooge. "She made this soup with just one button." Well, when the time came for Daisy to leave, Scrooge went to the stagecoach to see her off. "Come back and visit me soon, Daisy," he said. After all, thought Scrooge, such clever nieces don't grow on every bush.